welcome everybody to episode 5 of The Female Perspective from MXP Magazine. I'm your host, Jackie Reese, joined today by a new guest to the show, Jensen Amyotte. How are you doing, Jensen?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Good.
We have a lot to talk about. Triple Crown race in Glendale, Arizona last weekend for the Supercross series. But I want to get started with the Canadian highlights. We had a couple kiddos in the KTM Junior Supercross Challenge. Chandler Powell from Ontario and Matteo Giusti from Alberta, which is awesome to see that those kids are running down there in the Supercross.
Making the trek down there. Yeah. It's very cool to see Ontario or even just Canada. Anywhere in the States is cool to see.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. And they finished 7th and ninth respectively. So awesome to have those kiddos down there. We've had a lot of kids from Canada in the KTM juniors, and just a great opportunity for them to get on the big stage.
Definitely. It's nice. There was even a couple of girls at A1 and talking to them afterwards was pretty cool. It's nice to see them out there for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we have a little crossover going today. DMX, MXP here. You actually write the Out of the Blue articles for Direct Motocross, and
Yes.
you got to talk to one of those little girls. So let's jump back to Anaheim 1, Charlie, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's right. And we were talking a little bit and I just kind of emailed back and forth with them, but um she did really good and she was super excited about it. And it's nice to see women in the States in general, but just women in the sport. It's awesome. And then actually being able to talk to them about it and then bring other people to see that it doesn't matter what age you are, you can do big things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I love seeing the little girls out there. There were twin girls out there this weekend, which I thought was super cool that they both got to go.
Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Jumping up to the 250 West class, Cole Thompson. Man, we've been talking about how Cole is just getting on a roll. He's building up momentum. He's, just becoming a solid, 10th plus guy.
Yeah.
He got 11th in the first race of 3 this weekend, and then in the second race, he got landed on, which is super unfortunate. Shoulder injury, it sounds like, on the left side.
Hmm.
Um, this is literally like every rider's worst nightmare. Like, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm like, if I miss a triple or something like that, I'm always looking over my shoulder, like,
Yeah,
like
definitely.
what's gonna happen?
I've been landed on it. It's not fun.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was going over a jump. I was riding. It was literally just practice, and I was out with the junior practice. This was years ago, and a guy literally overshot a double. And as I was landing, he was coming down, and his foot peg and everything like scraped the side of my arm, and I broke my hand. And oh yeah, it's not fun. You
Yeah.
don't really notice it until you're off the track though, and you don't have adrenaline pumping through you though.
Yeah, and so I guess in Cole's case, that must have been so bad for him that he wasn't able to finish the race. Like,
Yeah,
for you, the adrenaline pumping, you're able to finish it out, but Cole had to pull off with those injuries, and what a bummer to see for him.
yeah. Not fun, that's for sure, because he's been doing really good and seeing top tens, and he's so worthy of that and he can definitely do it. But it's unfortunate when something like that happens that's totally not in his control.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And really, I hope it's not so bad that he has to miss this next race because they have a nice break for the beginning of the East Coast Series.
Yeah,
I hope that he's able to, tough through this weekend and then come back strong in about a month for the rest of the West Coast.
yeah, let's hope, because he can do really good with it.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. So this weekend in Glendale, big track, big crowd. Um, Something that I learned. So they were talking on the broadcast that this track is bigger than regular football stadiums, and I was like, well, how do they do that if it's still a football stadium? Well, the bottom rows of seating they can actually move out. So they move out
Yeah.
some of the seating, which I had no idea that that was a thing. Turns out that our old Metrodome here in Minneapolis, you could do the same thing. But
Oh, cool.
so it was just like a huge track, and so that
Yeah.
allowed for some interesting obstacles. First, most notably for me, was the split start around that tunnel jump. What'd you think of the start
Yes.
this weekend?
I think that was actually pretty cool. It almost separates them, obviously, because it's in the split, but it's nice to see, there's a more definite way of, okay, this line makes you go here kind of thing. Like it's more spread out. And when you come into the corner, I didn't see as much carnage in the first corner as most weekends. And I think that kind of alleviated that, having that split start, and people weren't getting tangled up too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked longer. Like, I feel like it was a little longer than most starts too. So I think it was pretty cool. And I think that, they incorporated it really well.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So,
Yeah, and those two positions around the tunnel jump, which would be the doghouse, in a general race.
mm-hmm.
I feel like those were the two most advantageous places to start the race, because
Yeah.
you have all this room to one of your sides. Like if I'm coming out of that gate, I'm immediately cutting left, cutting right, like
Yeah.
having my own space, and like you had mentioned, just avoiding tangling with anyone off the start.
Yeah, definitely. Banging bars is not fun. And then you go down and then you just ruin it, especially in the Triple Crown, because like
Mm-hmm.
it's all race, right?
Yeah,
So,
and they're so short, right? Like
yeah.
you don't have a whole lot of time, which I'm sure we will get to Christian Craig here in a little bit.
Yeah.
Don't have a whole lot of time to make up all those positions, but
Right.
yeah, clean starts all weekend, which I was impressed with too.
Yeah, it's definitely cool how that, I don't know if maybe that was just luck, but I think the split start definitely had something to do with it being a little bit cleaner off the start. So,
Yeah, and like you had
yeah.
mentioned, the length of it too, and just a nice
Yeah.
wide corner, just a great start, even start, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree.
So, second most notable section for me was the sand section. These sand sections lately have had so much action, and they seem to be placing them in areas of the track that just make more sense to me. I remember last year there was notably one position, one race where the sand section was a corner and then some rollers and then 90-degree right in the finish line. I don't remember where it was, but it was literally just becoming one lined and no one could really get through it quickly. So
Yeah.
it's kind of nice to see them just do one corner and again, getting to Christian Craig later on in the podcast, they've been providing some action. So my question for you, Jensen, is should they stay or should they go?
I think they should stay. I mean, maybe I'm a little biased. I like sand. Gopher was always my favorite track, but I think they're cool. Like, I think it kind of differentiates people and separates people. Like, yeah, sure, some people aren't so good at hard pack, but then they have that sand section where they can really, put forward their effort and show that they're good in that. And unless it's one line, like you said, at previous, years or whatever, I think, like you said, also this year they've done a good job at placing where it is. So it is allowing people to kind of get that edge on somebody else, or use that outside, and just, you don't have to let off as much. You don't have to square out the corner, right? You can kind of just more rail the berm if there's a berm. So, and then I don't know, the roller sections just make it a little sketchy and they go a little sideways, but I think they should stay. I think they're pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. I agree, especially the way that they're doing it now. But these passes are very controversial. Like last weekend, we saw Anderson Roxon. This weekend,
Yeah.
Craig Friese. I don't think this weekend was necessarily because it was a sand section that had
No.
happened.
Others might disagree, but I agree with you.
But it's, there's two sides of the coin here. It's great racing action for the fan, but as the racer, it's a bit more risky. Your bike's not quite set up for that. And, it could be seen as controversial. A lot of these guys are getting penalties for their actions in the sand. So,
Yeah.
I agree with you from the fan perspective. Keep them. I'm not racing it.
No, exactly. I guess it would be different on people, like you said, bike setups and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A little different. You're more set up for the hard pack and obviously supercross suspension and whatnot. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it just kind of separates it a little bit, adds a little something to it.
Mm-hmm. and so with these, maybe the team see it as controversial. Maybe they push to, we don't want those anymore. Do you think that these passes being made play into the lifespan of the sand sections themselves?
Yes and no. Like you said, I don't think the pass that was made on Christian Craig was an aspect of sand. I think it was just, something else, but we'll get to that. But I think, yeah, I think it does help. Like, some people might like excel in that as opposed to hard pack corners, right? So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't really see him going away with it, but
No.
it's gonna make for interesting racing. wherever they continue to do it. And
Yeah, for
this
sure.
weekend, especially too, just being under the stands, that was like an awesome aspect to it as well.
Yeah, that was really cool. I remember seeing that somewhere else. I feel like it was in Glendale last year or something like that, where they went into the stands. But I think that's pretty cool too. And like you're utilizing more space, right?
Hmm.
And just making it that extra 3 seconds longer, which for Supercross is huge, right?
Yeah.
So somebody might want that extra 3 seconds for a lap time or something that they can excel in some sort of spot. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we saw lap times over a minute, which seems pretty rare. Last year it was 50 seconds, 47 seconds,
yeah,
like just not enough. So I think you're onto something. Like this year especially, they're also trying to make them a bit longer so the
yeah.
tracks don't get as rough by the
Hmm.
end of the day. So,
Right.
yeah,
Couple less laps, a little less rough, right?
exactly. So Triple Crown format, what do you think about the Triple Crown format? A little bit different. I think it's kind of nice to switch it up, but also I have some qualms with the format as well.
I think it's pretty cool. But like it's cool in the aspect that you have those 3 races and it is a little bit different. You changing up the pace a little bit, but it's kind of a bummer when, you have one bad moto and then you say you get, 17th or something. That 17 really reflects on your overall. So, people when they go say 1-1-1, like obviously that's the goal, but that's not the case with everyone. Like not everybody can win, but if you have one bad moto or you don't start or something happens, like that really affects your overall. But I think it's pretty cool in the sense that if you can have 3 consistent races, you're going to be able to gain points in the series overall too. So I think it's pretty cool. I wouldn't want it maybe every weekend, but definitely to switch it up a little bit, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And like you had mentioned, there's one side of the coin where if you mess up, it might go badly for you. But if you can just be solid podiums across the board, like we saw with Hunter Lawrence this weekend,
Mm-hmm,
it really works into your favor. Consistency is a
definitely.
part of the game and is important to this format. So,
Yeah.
he seemed like he felt bad that he didn't win everything. Um, but he still won the overall, and consistency is part of the game. It's not always about speed.
I agree. Yeah, consistency is key, that's for sure, especially in Supercross because so much can happen when you don't have long lap times and numerous like 30-minute motos. Like you're not getting that in Supercross. So you almost need to just be consistent more than anything. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's too much racing? I personally like I kind of like the heats because it allows some of those privateer guys to get some more track time during the night show, even if they, were the 40th guy and they know that they're not going to make it into the
Hmm.
main, like it's still a big stage in the regular format for those privateer guys, you know, making the night
Yeah,
show.
they don't see a lot of like the privateer guys that are still fast. Like even Adam Minanap, like you didn't see him in the 450 class, and it's like he's still up there. Like seeing him get top 4 in say an LCQ is still so cool, and that's an accomplishment on his career. But you don't get that with the Triple Crown. So I think it's more of a bummer for privateers and people who are getting 40th, like you said, which is still a huge accomplishment, but they're not getting the chance on that big stage in front of all the people and whatnot. So
Hmm. Yeah, it too is for the average fan who only knows Eli Tomac's name, only knows Ken Roxon's name. Like
yeah,
that's what they want to see. So I feel like this format too caters a little bit more to the average viewer than
yeah,
you and me who are actually really invested in the privateers that
yes,
we want to see those guys out on the track. So I
yeah,
guess it depends on who's watching and which format you like.
exactly. Yeah, it's nice to switch it up though. Like I said, if it was on every weekend thing, I think a lot of people probably wouldn't even bother to do it.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
yeah, it's tough on equipment. That's a quick turnaround. They're only an hour between races, which
yeah,
we see in motocross too. But it's just doing it one extra time. I feel like as the riders, as the mechanics, having to prep that bike multiple times throughout the day, it just becomes a lot. And so
yeah,
I think everyone's on the same page here. Like they're cool, but maybe three is enough. Maybe one or two throughout the year would be okay too.
yeah. Maybe it's a little much, but I know, and everyone has different perspectives on it. Like you're still technically, yeah, racing 3 times, but the heat races are much shorter and you're not going full tilt all the time. Like you mess up, okay, you might get to go to the LCQ, but it's all or nothing when it comes to the Triple Crown. But I don't know. I think, like you said, just keep switching it up and see if they can incorporate some here and there. But yeah.
Hmm. So, building off of, oh, it's a lot of racing, oh, it's a lot of work, I was thinking, like, well, what if we make it worth it? What if every single race throughout the night was worth points? Does that make it more worth it, or does that make the chaos and potential crashes, does it make it more detrimental, to the series as a whole and the points chase and championship as a whole?
If they treated it every race, say there was three or even two of them, and each was a main, like if they counted it as 2 rounds or something like that, I think it would be a little different, and I think it would rub a lot of people the wrong way, especially the privateers and people who are sitting, 21st, or even like people who don't make the night show, they're sitting 23rd, but they're still doing good. Like they're still in that points and, something to work forward to. But if you're not getting those points, you know, collectively, it's a little different. So,
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? Like, not only did you not make this one night of mains, you
mm-hmm.
missed out on three opportunities of points. So
Yeah,
I think that's a good point for sure. But for the top of the points, like, it would be just absolute chaos. Those top guys going for the championship and the potential for 75, 70, because they changed it from 25, now it's 26, so 78 points on the night would
yeah,
be
that's huge.
huge.
Yeah,
and
very huge.
and it's not like everyone just 111, 222, 333. Like
No,
there's so much parity in the top of this class right now that the gaps might not come out to be that big. Like it
yeah,
might work out at the top.
definitely. Yeah.
So, any last thoughts on Triple Crown format? It's a lot for me, but provided us some exciting racing tonight.
Yeah, I think one or two a year is enough. I wouldn't put any more than that in.
Yeah. All right. Moving into the 250 West, who stood out to you Saturday night in Glendale and why?
Probably Moseman. Like he crashed off the start. He was way back and like just picking people off and just consistent. And I find like even Joe Shimoda, when he goes down, I feel like when he gets up, he just pushes so hard. And if you look at the lap times, they're faster. Like he's really pushing and really just trying to get ahead and picking people off and picking people off, which I know, yes, one first place is first place, but the way you ride speaks volumes too. Like how many people you can pick off, what your lap times are, how you recover from falling and stuff like that. So I think Moseman probably for Glendale stood out to me the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the flip side of that is that he did make a lot of mistakes. Like last weekend, we saw him. Maybe it was 2 weekends now. We saw him win. He has a win under his
Yep.
belt so far this season. Um, but just those mistakes, I think, are what are going to prevent him from really trying to, take down Christian Craig in this championship as a whole.
Right.
Um, but that's not to say that he doesn't have it in him, right? Like
Right.
he's young, we're learning, we're figuring things out. Like you said, he has the speed, he has the heart, and that's I think more important than anything, right?
Yeah.
But I think as the years goes on, he's going to be a champion at some point here.
He's going to learn and I think he's spending so much energy on trying to, get back up there and go from last and recovering from mistakes that he's not able to show how he could actually if he got a start, like you can see what can happen. Like he obviously got that win under his belt and that he's capable. So, and that's for a few of them too, like even Joe Shimoda, like that he's up there, that he's quick, that he's able to win. But yeah, I think they're spending a lot of energy when they do fall and whatever else and make mistakes even, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. My standout for the week is Hunter Lawrence. Cool, calm, collected, 1-2-1 or 2-1-2 finishes, something like that. Like we
Something
were
like
talking
that.
about earlier. So like we were talking about earlier, it's just consistency is the key, and he, didn't really seem hyped afterwards that he,
No.
How he got that win, but consistency is the name of the game in this
Mm-hmm.
situation, and he has it on lockdown.
Yeah, I think especially in the Triple Crown, like that's totally, you keep it up and you're gonna be on top. Obviously, it shows, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah.
And okay, my second is Christian Craig. We have to address the elephant in the room, I think, at this point. Uh, Christian Craig was the dominant guy this weekend. The speed was there. The consistency, I think, would have been there to potentially sweep for the whole evening.
Mhm.
Just Friese. What are you doing, man? What do you make of it?
I don't know. Well, it's clear that he definitely could have chosen another line. That sand section was by no means one line at that point, especially. Um, maybe he didn't see him. Maybe he'll argue that he didn't see him. But like, how do you not? How can you not hear someone? You can always hear people in your, like, when they're behind you, whatever. But I think it was just dirty. I think it was something that totally could have been avoided.
Yeah.
But and then in the same token, like, maybe if Craig, backed off a little bit, but then it's like, does he miss out on another position as well?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't
So
know. I mean, Craig was in front. Like, he has the
yeah.
track. You know, he's going where he wants to go, and whoever has the lead has the track position. So if you're in second, third, fourth, that opening lap, of course, is just crazy. No matter
Mm-hmm.
what you're racing, local to pro ranks, you have to follow suit. Like, you either have to file in behind him, take that outside line, or take another line.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, ill-advised at best, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I think it
So,
was just a little dirty.
mm-hmm.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
wouldn't do that to someone, I don't think.
No,
But I
probably
mean, they
not.
make a lot more money than we've ever made, so
Yeah.
maybe a little different.
Yeah, but also, like, you took yourself out. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not going to go well for either of you if you're both going down. And
Yeah.
okay, thank goodness they were both okay. Thank goodness Christian was okay because he went
Yeah.
absolutely flying. Um, but really, like, what can what else does Christian Craig have to overcome this year? Like,
Yeah.
everything's been thrown at him, and his speed just shows how fast he can move through the
Mm-hmm.
crowd. He moved up to fourth, like,
Yeah.
in what, 8 minutes? Like, you have to be going so much faster than everybody
Right.
else to come from last. So
Yeah.
very impressed by Christian Craig.
I am as well. At first I was like, oh, here we go. Christian's gonna win again. But it's like, he deserves it too, right?
Hmm.
Like, a lot of people will say, oh, he needs to be in the 450 class, or he needs to move up. He needs to move up. But it's like, he's been thrown so many curveballs. It's like, he deserves to get that 250 win.
Hmm.
So I think it's just all different on who you ask.
Yeah, right. Which side you're on? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I hope it goes for him. Like, he only has an 8 point lead, but is 8 points
Mm-hmm.
enough in this situation? Do you think Hunter's consistency will maybe outweigh every controversial adversarial thing that happens to Christian in this championship?
I think it could. Like, I think, again, if he continues to be consistent, and say Christian has one bad moto where he, heaven forbid, like, can't finish, or something happens to his bike, whatever. If he can't finish, like, if Hunter Lawrence is even top three, like, he's gonna get more points, because anything's better than a DNF or something like that, right? Or even a 10th place. So if he's more consistent, I think he's going to be able to pull forward. But I don't think Craig will let that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Hunter's speed is just a little bit off from Christian's. And so if they were, like, both the exact same speed, I'd be much more worried. But I
Mm-hmm.
feel like Christian has the upper hand speed wise right now than
And
on
experience
Hunter.
wise too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
He's
sure.
definitely got more experience too.
Yeah, he's a
Little age
dad of
difference.
a dad of three and 30
Yeah.
years old in the 250 class, but adversity happens. He took a few
Yes.
years off from racing there, so it's not like he's been in the class for 12 years at this point.
Right.
It's
Right. Or had a
it's
championship. Like, that's obviously not a no-go.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just keep talking about how good Christian Craig is. At first, I wasn't really on board, but now, like, you can't deny it. He's just so
No,
good. He's
you
so good.
can't. There's no way around it. Oh, you didn't do very good. Clearly he did. He won. So there's no faking that.
Yeah, yeah. And going into this break, they have one more round of the West Coast before we go east to the first round here in Minneapolis. I'm very excited. Um, who do you think is going to try their best to make up that ground on Christian Craig?
Probably Hunter Lawrence. I feel like he's the, you know, closest to be up there with him. Speed wise, I don't know. It's hard. I definitely think Mosman has a chance as well. he's got the speed. He shows that he's had the speed, but there's just so many people in that top 10 in the 250 class that could make it. So I think they'll all be pushing, especially because the points are so close. It's not like he's got a 15-point lead or 20-point lead. Like, they're pretty close. It only takes one win or one top three that you're going to get ahead. Mm-hmm. So I think they're all going to go in full tilt for that last round and try and get ahead.
Mm-hmm. What do you think Vince does during this break? Do you think he, works harder to improve his speed, or I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. He's an oddball, I think. He's got the speed, but I don't think he's got the consistency or the stamina to reach out with all the other guys that are top 10 or even maybe top 5, I should say, because he is quick. He's got his speed, but I don't think he's got the experience either. Like, yes, he's raced for years, but maybe he hasn't learned as much. I don't know. So yeah. Maybe he'll use it to learn some things.
Okay, that's something I wanted to ask you. Like, at what point does he learn this racecraft, right? Like, I think of beginner riders that have no concept of racecraft, and as you race more, you develop that, of course. Like, you can't be expected to know it all out of the gate. This is a guy who's a veteran in the class who just has never developed that sense of long game, sense of setting up a pass, corners in advance.
Yeah.
What is it going to take for him to learn that, A, and B, stop making bonehead moves?
I think he just needs to think more on, like you said, he's kind of just going for it corner per corner or jump per jump. Like, if he actually, tried to set something up, I think it might help him in that aspect, where you can, be like, okay, like, this guy's taking this line, then he's taking this line. If I make this line and make this pass, then I'll be able to get ahead of him clean instead of just, like you said, making a bonehead move.
Well, moving on to the 450 class, who impressed you? Tomac had a great weekend last weekend. Did you expect him to win this weekend in Triple Crown format?
I kind of did. I'm pretty sure he won last year in the Triple Crown as well. I think he's just got that in his head, like, oh, I have this little bit of an upper hand because I know how it works and I've got the confidence and stuff. So I kind of expected it from him. But I think the person that really stood out to me the most was Stewart. Like, yes, he's always there. Yes, he's always consistent. But I think this weekend he kind of just excelled that comfortable level. Like, he's taking more risks, but not being sketchy kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I think he was definitely the one that kind of stood out the most to me.
Yeah,
how about you?
I agree. Like, Mookie just looked like 250 Mookie who, maybe a notch down from that. 250 Mookie was ready to, take any risk, take any chance, go as fast as he could, go fifth gear through the whoops, like, just flying. But this looked like he finally meshed that speed with the consistency and thoughtfulness that he's been working on the past couple of years. So I'm very excited. I think this really got the season going for Mookie. I can't wait to watch more. Like,
yeah, I think I'm excited to see how he'll do in outdoors too. Like, I feel like he's good at Supercross, don't get me wrong, but I feel like having that confidence going into the outdoors too, I think it'll help him with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or it might present a challenge, right?
True.
He hasn't done it in a few years now, and he's on a new bike. So,
yeah,
getting that new bike used to something that you haven't done in a little bit could be difficult. So,
right.
I'm excited to see too where he stacks up, and being at Alden's, his fitness and his mental preparation is going to be second to none. So that shouldn't be an issue in those longer motos in the summer.
Definitely, for sure.
Of course, Tomac had to stand out to me too. Like, it's
I think that's a given.
Yeah, like, the starts were incredible this weekend. He 2 for 2 in the first two, and then the third one, how could you be disappointed with still a top 3-5 start? I was impressed.
Definitely. He didn't have to make his way through the pack. Like, he was just out front and he was just there. Mm-hmm. And I feel like even if he had started from way behind, he still would have made his way up. He seemed to flow really well on that track too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And just like, this whole front pack is so close in lap times that it's difficult for any of them to make passes on each other or, gain on each other. It just seems like a freight train to me of guy after guy after guy after guy for that top 10, top
Hmm.
8, top 10. And so how do you think that that really is impacted with these shorter races in the Triple Crown format?
I think it would have been cool to see other people, win. Like I feel like the racing was good, but like you said, that top 8 or 10, they're all there. They've all got the speed. Their lap times are like milliseconds off each other. Like they're totally there, and it could have been anybody's race. So I think it's pretty cool knowing that, you know, even in future races like coming up, it'll be interesting to see how they all, race against each other because it's kind of all about that start. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're down off the start, especially in the Triple Crown, you don't get a lot of time up.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a couple minutes less, but it's makes up for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And this goes back to the point that we were making earlier that it's very important that they had a very fair start here this weekend. And so the split design, a little bit different, but overall, I think made for much cleaner starts throughout the year or throughout the evening and really played into everybody having their best 10, 10, 12 minutes of racing
Yeah.
3 times in a row.
Yeah. I think a lot of people were also a little more cautious off the start, maybe knowing that they really only had that time and, you know, that thought of, okay, if I go down off the start, it's going to be a lot to get myself back up. But if I start even, mid pack and I'm still up, you have a better chance of someone who goes down, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good point. And speaking of starts, someone that I wish would get a great start is Dylan Ferrandis, Eli Tomac's
Yes.
teammate. Um, every single weekend, he is moving through the pack, and like we were just talking about how difficult that is, he's making
Yes.
moves from outside of the top 10 through into that pack. So
Yes.
that is someone that I have that's just all I want. All I want is a race where Dylan Ferrandis gets a top 3 start and see where he goes from there because if he can dial those in, I think he can win.
Yeah. Because his lap times are definitely there. Like he's definitely got the speed for it, but he just needs to get that start.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the bigger scope of the 450 series, who do you think is looking forward to moving to the East Coast rounds? So, our first race of the East Coast here in Minneapolis in a couple weeks. Or who do you think is kind of holding on to that last West Coast round? Who's been excelling on the West Coast?
It's hard to say. Like I feel like Tomac has that consistency at the beginning of the year, and he's always, excels at that. And I think maybe going into the East, it's going to bring other people in, right? Like there's all the people that are coming from behind, and at the beginning of the year, you kind of have more of that drive, whereas throughout the season, you kind of get more beat down, and things start to happen. And so I think maybe Tomac's a little bit excited that it's kind of coming to an end on the East, but he's probably still, going to push forward for it on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of the KTM guys are really looking forward to the East Coast. Uh, in the past, that Yamaha that Tomac has been on has been notoriously better, I guess notoriously worse on the West Coast, and notably better on the East Coast. But the KTMs have really not been doing too well this year with that new bike. Um, I hope that that bike is set up more so for the East Coast, and I think a lot of those riders are more East Coast based and more
Yeah.
attuned to those tracks alone. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of the KTM guys are really looking forward to moving east in a couple weeks.
That's a good point. Like knowing where you stand with like the dirt's different, right? And your the altitude, like your breathing's going to be different. Like I remember when they were doing all those rounds in Salt Lake City?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like a lot of people's breathing was off because it's that altitude, like that's changing things. Your bike changes, like the way your bike performs is different. You got to get used to it almost. Whereas people who, like, I think the 250 class has an advantage on the, like when they come into the East Coast, obviously, because they're used to it,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's where they rode. That's where they're, practicing. A lot of people come from there. So I think definitely that has a big aspect of it too, is being comfortable in different coasts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the challenge of the 450 class, right? It's not just where you come from because a lot of the 250 guys are local to where they're racing. Some not so much, but generally the case.
Yeah.
But that 450 class is a long series, and B, just this range of terrains, range of tracks, soils throughout the
Yeah.
entire year. So I agree. It's a challenge, and hopefully, a good challenge for people.
Yeah.
That, people always talk about the West Coast being hard pack and slippery. So hopefully more traction, and we have a couple speedway rounds coming up. Hopefully that will be great for the racing coming up.
Hopefully it doesn't rain. That's
Right.
never fun. I mean, it makes for a good race, but I was never a fan of the rain unless it was sand track.
Yeah, I know, and I don't think these mechanics would be very stoked on that either.
Nope.
Like we had been talking about earlier, you and I, just motocross is a different animal for the mechanics than supercross is. So when you bring mud into the supercross arena, it makes it more motocross prep type on the motorcycle itself.
Yes. Trying to deflect that mud as much as you can.
A lot of
take
SC1.
off some weight. Yeah. Okay, it smells good.
Yeah, it smells like cherries. Yeah. Any concluding thoughts as we round out the podcast?
I'm excited to see where the East takes the 450 class, and then seeing some more Canadian guys come in for the East Coast. Like, I think it's going to be pretty sweet. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited for that.
A lot of Canadian 250 riders coming in for the East Coast. I think that'll be awesome for a lot of people to see, and I agree. I'm looking forward to it and talking about it on this podcast later on.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's going to be good racing, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jensen, thank you very much for joining me for the Female Perspective. It's been fun.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome.
Thank you, everybody else, for joining us for episode 5 of the Female Perspective from MXP Magazine. We will see you next week for another episode. If you like this episode, share it with a friend. And if you are not already, subscribe wherever you're listening so that you get that notification that we have a new episode up. Talk to you soon.